Hi, this is Zachary Shevich of the Pretentious Film Majors. We're here in Drexel's URBN Annex screening room with the acclaimed writer-director Todd Haynes. Is it strange at all when you have those superlatives in front of your name?
Especially when it's after the Pretentious Film Majors. I thought it was Filmmakers. Film Majors.
Majors, since we're all college students, you're embracing that.
Excellent.
So you're originally from Los Angeles.
I am.
What did your parents do in Los Angeles?
My dad worked in business. He represented different makeup lines, basically. My mom was an interior decorator. So not related to the film industry in LA. My grandfather, however, worked in Warner Brothers in the 1930s and head of set construction, and saw some pretty amazing times in the late 30s and early 40s.
Cool. So did living in Los Angeles expose you to a lot of film and arts, or was that not so much a part of your early childhood?
It was, and I think that was due to my family and their interest in film and the arts and encouragement of exposing us kids to culture. My grandparents as well. So yeah, we would see movies. It was a ritual. We'd see theater. We'd go to museums. It was I feel lucky that I had that kind of upbringing.
At what point did you think filmmaking was a possibility for you, or did you see yourself as a filmmaker from early on?
I did. I was definitely interested in art making and visual art. I did theater and stuff like that when I was a kid. But from a pretty young age, I sort of fell in love with movies. In fact, I would say that really it was the first movie I saw when I was 3 years old, Mary Poppins, that set in motion a kind of obsessive relationship to the big screen. And within that movie, every possible aspect that's been manifested in anything I've done, I think, like female subject matter, domestic storytelling, the sort of the powerful presence of certain female, iconic figures in movies, definitely all emanated from that first experience.
And then you went to Brown University, and what did you study there?
When I was 3, and then I went to Brown. I entered into, sort of unwittingly and not really knowing what it meant, the semiotics program at Brown in 1980. And this was a sort of theory-based, critical studies informed, new venture within the English department, kind of a renegade department. But if you wanted to make films, if you wanted to do any kind of production whatsoever, that's what you had to do first, to take prerequisites in theory. So it was a kind of a twisted, unexpected way of following through some of these interests in film that had already started in my high school years.
How do you think that informed you as an early filmmaker? Did it help push you towards your early short films and then Poison, or did it give you a different kind of education in film?
I feel, and I don't know if this is true for everybody who sort of stumbled into the semiotics program with the interest of production guiding them. For me, I think it was conducive to already questions I was asking about society and representation, and that I found a sort of parallel language for in the theoretical bracket. And so I think it helped and focused things that were already in place. But it's funny how much films that I actually made as a high school student, one in particular, this sort of culminative project called The Suicide that I shot in Super 8, but that we ultimately finished crazily, talk about pretentious film majors, in 35 sound. We had a Super 8 movie and a 35 millimeter sound mix at Samuel Goldwyn Studios because we had connections and through friends. But this film, which used a sort of fractured, intercutting strategy with black and white and color, anticipates things that I would do later after college when I came to New York and settled, like Poison, I would say, and other films of mine that are more fractured and where narrative strands are broken up.
And you met your producing partner, Christine Vachon, at Brown, right?
I did.
So how did you, with her, end up going about making your first feature in Poison? How did you take on that task?
Christine was making short films in college, and I was making short films in college. And a mutual friend from Brown, Barry Ellsworth, was starting a little bit after we all graduated in New York. He sort of was setting out to do this, to set up an organization. He had a little seed money from his family. And he wanted to set up a nonprofit organization that focused on the sort of nurturing of what we called experimental narratives. And this wasn't for our own work. This was a nonprofit organization we ultimately got NPO status for. And we help provide grants and different kinds of production expertise or services or support to independent filmmakers who were kind of at that unique place where they were coming out of school, but they really wouldn't have stood the competition of a New York State Council for the Arts grant or an NEA grant quite yet. And we sort of served that interim period, or that was sort of our mandate as an organization. But it put us in touch with, it was a kind of an amazing opportunity to be asked to join in this venture and kind of figure it out ourselves as we went along. And it put us right in the center of independent film production, or what would become indie film, or low budget film in New York, right at a pretty exciting time. And so around that time, I started to make my film Superstar. And when Christine saw the cut of it, she basically said, she came to my apartment where I was cutting in Brooklyn. She basically said, I would love to produce your next film. And that became Poison.
And a lot of young filmmakers talk about not having the artistic freedom to do what they want, but that's never really seemed to stop you from getting your vision on the screen. How committed are you to your vision? How important is making sure you're doing the stuff that you're really interested to you?
I think a certain integrity, people projected a certain integrity in the kind of work we were doing because it was sort of on our own terms, and it in turn attracted actors who want to do some more serious work or more challenging work, and that only helped us as well get the next thing financed, because we would maybe have a name or semi-name actor interested in participating.
So I wanted to ask you if there's two filmmakers in particular, or maybe two classic films that really inspired you and informed your work as an artist.
Oh, there's so many. And I didn't quite realize how lucky I was to be kind of coming of age in the 1970s in this country, in Los Angeles even, and exposed to so many great films coming out, to the degree that we would turn our little noses up at, Chinatown. Oh, it seemed like a commercial Hollywood movie, and instead we'd go to Mel Natal at UCLA and watch all the Kubrick films that were in some film series, or the incredibly rich revival house culture that was still thriving at that time and continued into the 1980s and then really dried up, where you could basically plant yourself in a revival cinema and see a double bill of classic, European art cinema or new wave film or American classics, a different double bill every single night of the week, and that became a sort of self-education as well. But I, Kubrick made a huge impact on my mind at that time. I mean, he cut through even all the, but I remember seeing Nashville when it came out and being blown away. I mean, there was just so much exciting work to sort of partake in at that time.
I just wanted to ask one last question. If there's one piece of advice you could give to young filmmakers, what would that be?
It's such a mundane thing to say, but because the question used to sort of be phrased like, should I go to film school or not? Does that help? Does that, and I think when people would ask that question, I would basically just say the film school itself isn't going to teach you how to make films. You know, if it provides you with resources and equipment and structures and timetables to get stuff made, great, you know, go for it. But these days, those resources have expanded, and there's so many different ways that people can make films on their own terms, in their own way, but it's really just about making them. And there's no way that you learn more than by the sheer experience of writing something, conceiving something, shooting something, trying to cut it together, and trying to create a coherent piece in the end.
For more interviews and videos from the Pretentious Film Majors, be sure to visit our website at pretentiousfilmmajors.com or like us on Facebook at facebook.com/pretentiousfilmmajors. Thanks again.